points to anyone who guesses where my new favourite t-shirt is from. It's that time of year again! In fact, it's kind of a while after that time of year again. I'm really bad at making videos on time, as those of you who have been waiting years for some of my promised videos will know. I know though that a lot of you are beginning to amass the lengthy lists of books you want to read this year, and so I will help by telling you the best books I read last year. In 2014 I read 113 books. Don't worry, that number seems a lot bigger than it actually should be. There's a lot of graphic novels and tiny pamphlets on there. I just like cheating. But of those, this year's top 10 were actually quite hard to pick because when I finished university I treated myself a lot, so I read a hell of a lot of good books. So after a lot of consideration, feeling really bad about those close calls that just didn't make it, here are my top 10 in reverse order. 1. My True Love Gave to Me, a collection of short stories edited by Stephanie Perkins. This book almost didn't make it into the list, not because it wasn't good enough, but because I almost didn't read it in 2014. I read it right at the end of the year. In fact, I think I read a lot of it on New Year's Eve. This is a brilliant collection of winter, Christmas, New Year's short stories by some of your favourite YA authors. There are stories in here by Rainbow Rowell, David Levithan, Holly Black, Lani Taylor. Amazing names, well known for good writing. And this book really follows suit. Although the stories may only be a handful of pages long, they're really enjoyable and honestly, they make you fall in love. Rainbow Rowell's especially was such a highlight for me. 2. The Five People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. I'm not entirely sure why I read this. I think I might have been recommended it by the YouTuber Avinicus. It reminded me a bit of Some, my favourite book of last year. The storyline is, as the title suggests, the 5 people you meet after you die. It's really good at giving that thought experiment though. It goes through our protagonist's life in these different people, these different meetings, and it's got a really good twist to it. 3. The Game of Thrones graphic novels, both of them, even though for some reason I can only find the first to show you on camera. Must have lent the second to someone. So you know I'd put further stories from A Song of Ice and Fire here if I could, if George R.R. Martin would just write us something more, but we haven't, so we'll have to make do. The graphic novels focus on stories happening 50 years before the stories starting in A Game of Thrones, and they are great. These, for those who don't know, are the Dunk and Egg stories, which I'm pretty sure have been published as short stories in other volumes, but this is the first media I've come into contact with them in, so they're new stories for me. Although they're for the most different characters to what we're used to, and it's set in a different kind of time period, George R.R. Martin is just really great at writing characters that you love, that you want to see what happens to, even if you know that isn't going to be amazingly great. Yeah, I am waiting for everyone to die or be cut into a million pieces, miserable and alone in the next volume. 4. So I'm going to continue cheating with this next one, and I'm going to talk about Isaac Asimov short stories. I read 2 volumes this year, one just entitled Short Stories, the other I, Robot. Yeah, you wouldn't know it from the weird film with Will Smith, but the I, Robot book is actually short stories, although told in a narrative. Asimov is so good at thought experiments in his works. His works are like mathematical problems. When he presents the answer, the twist at the end, it makes so much sense, but I never would have been able to second guess it. Although I define myself as a fantasy girl, Asimov is slowly and surely bringing me around to sci-fi. 5. The graphic novel Saga, of which I read 3 volumes last year. Yeah, again cheating. This is a graphic novel unlike any other I've ever read, and it really does seem to be pushing the boundaries of what's normal and what's acceptable within this genre. I think it's really great for representation, for feminism, for LGBT characters. Also really fantastic for making you love and sympathise with the good characters and the bad characters. 6. Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. So yes, everyone was going on about it, everyone was praising it, and what more can I do but praise it too? I love how Rainbow Rowell has created the Simon Snow series to, in a way, represent Harry Potter, just like The Unwritten did with the Tommy Taylor series. I love that this is a book that considers fandom and has its main character as someone who is interested in it, who is someone who is a fanfiction writer. But just more generally, I think Rowell really gets across the emotions this character is feeling going away to university, perhaps falling in love. I just think this was a brilliant book. It melted my heart. It made me love it so much. 7. Now, as is typical of these yearly reviews, I can't do one without mentioning Terry Pratchett. I've been reading through the Discworld for a few years now, and a good percentage of what I read last year was by T. Prizzle himself. In fact, with Raising Steam, I have now finished the Discworld. I have now read all its 40 books. And I've also come across my favourite of them so far. Nightwatch, one of Vimes's Guards books. This is a brilliant book because it sends Vimes back in time, back to when the police force was really corrupted, back to when he himself had just joined. Think of a cross between Life on Mars and Les Miserables. In this book, Vimes needs to catch a dangerous criminal who's been sent back in time with him. He needs to straighten out the watch and put it on the path he knows it needs to go. And he also needs to see to Ankh-Morpork. He needs to see it become the city he knows it will be. I just don't understand how books like this can be so funny and yet so emotional and so meaningful. Terry Pratchett, God among writers. 8. We're getting to the big ones now. This book, I kid you not, I have bought for over 5 people as birthday presents this year alone. Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brosh. Ali Brosh must be familiar to a load of you. She runs the blog Hyperbole and a Half. Hyperbole and a Half. Undecided. If you've ever seen Ali Brosh's work before, you'll know that she doesn't just write, although her writing is brilliant, she also illustrates her work. And her art, although it may be devoid of artistic poise, is fantastic at showing what she means. Throughout her work, Ali talks about memories from her childhood, trying to train the dogs when a goose got in, but also depression and more serious issues such as that. I just think this book is necessary for emotional development. If I could, I would buy you all copies. 9. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I honestly can't believe how much sci-fi has got onto my list this year. I'm honestly going robotic. I have started writing a review for this. I need to put one up because I recommend it to so many people I just end up repeating myself over and over again. It's pretty much a book I think anyone could read and really, really enjoy. It's set in the future, largely in a fully immersive game, and the maker, when he died, left some Easter eggs. If you find them, you will be rich beyond your wildest dreams. This book is brilliant for plot and suspense, for action and adventure, for all the references to the 80s. But again, for brilliant, interesting characters that do have some sort of representation to them. 10. And finally, for my top book of the year, I am cheating. I am definitely cheating again. Because I want to talk about Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, which is 2 or maybe even 3 books, depending on how you got your first one. This series, oh my god, this series. It is the best fantasy I've read since Game of Thrones. It has multiple viewpoints and different characters that you will grow to love. Kaladin, the wronged slave, and Shalyn, the determined scholar girl. But the world building is so unlike any other fantasy book I've ever read. It's got all its creatures who live in shells, plants that skit away from you like anemones when you come near. Women must cover their safe hand, otherwise that would be really scandalous. Men do not learn to write. The intricacies of the world he creates are so unique, but so is the magic system. There are so many amazing elements to it that all fit in and make sense, but that I'm not going to be able to describe properly in a few seconds on a YouTube video. You can change what your direction of gravity is, you can summon a shard blade, you can turn different materials into other materials, and all of this goes on top of a plot that is amazing and gripping and makes you want to really find out what's on the next page. This story, as far as I am concerned, is perfect. It makes me want to not write because what else can top it? Bar the fact that my heart is now tied to it, I cannot do anything but await book 3. Damn you, Sanderson, write your heart out and write it now. I need more. So that is my top 10 books. I hope there are some in there that you fancy the sound of, that I can recommend to you. Do tell me in the comments what your favourite book of last year was. Maybe I'll try and give it a read. I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.